Okay. Now we'll start with Greek architecture. And Greek architecture can be categorized into two eras, Helladic era and Hellenic era. Helladic era mainly had to do with Mycenaean architecture or the Mycenaean civilization, and this was more Greece. So, Mycenaean architecture had something called as the Cyclopean masonry. So, what does that mean is the Greeks were the people to name it as Cyclopean masonry, and Cyclope means giants. So, the masonry involved huge blocks of stones, and they were constructed without having any mortar. And they thought only giants can carry stones as big as that, and so that they called it as Cyclopean masonry. So this is like a rough scale of how big the stones were. And also, so that is Cyclopean masonry. And another thing that was famous during the Mycenaean architecture or Mycenaean civilization is lion gates. So what are lion gates? We'll see that. So this was how the lion were like there, and the stones were arranged in corbelling way around it with two posts forming column kind of structure. So these were the lion or sculpture or lion's face, and these are like it's a corbelling arch, and these are posts. And it is also said that Greek architecture was a Trapezian construction. So what is Trapezian construction? It means in something that has to do with post and lintels, which is column and beams. Okay, we have lion gate, and I'll show you a picture of lion gate in a while. Then we have our burial thalos. So we had burial thalos, they looked something like this. And burial thalos were also used as places to store their treasure or jewelry for a rough period of time. And some other important terms is megaron, which is the central court in a royal building or in any building. It is the central court usually used for discussion and stuff. There is propylon, which is the entrance to a building. And that's about it. Now coming to the Hellenic period, or how the Greece evolved. So Greeks had pretty relatively moderate temperature, and that made them have a lot of open civic life, mostly open public life. Like they used a lot of open spaces, for leisure and for having public gatherings and other sort of stuff. And that was one of the important reasons for them to have agoras. Now agoras were the central space within a city which was surrounded by public buildings, stores, temples, and other such places. And since the Greeks also believed, were kind of religious, and they believed that gods were the utmost, they gave more utmost importance to the gods. So they were usually placed at the top of the hills. So they had their temples and stuff at top of the hills, and at the summit of it or at the bottom of it they had their city. And they also believed that situating the temples at the top of the mountains keeps them closer to heaven. And most of the most of the city planning was done by a person called Hippodamus of Miletus, and he was the disciple of Pythagoras. Okay, so we have the basics of Greek architecture now. Then some of the some of the important places. So we know that Agora is the marketplace, and there is something called as Boulaterion, which means the courthouse. It was used used as a space for the councils to meet, have a discussion and stuff. They had Palestra. It is a gymnasium. These included baths, toilets, club rooms, spectator areas, and other stuff. They also had something called as Hippodrome. It is a horse racing place. And they had Propylaea. It means the entrance gateway to the cities. And Stova, which is like a covered colonnade which was present in most of the public buildings in the front porch and areas like that. So covered colonnades. Stova. Then they had Odeon, and it was a concert hall. And they had Prytaneum, which was the Senate house. So these are some of the important terminology of Greek architecture. Other than that, or most of us know about the golden ratio. I'm not going to explain deeper into this. Just the ratio is 1:1.618, and it is said that if you cut a rectangle into a square, the remaining part of the rectangle would still be in the golden ratio. So that was golden ratio. Then we had optical correction or optical illusion. And they had a term for it. Even the Greeks and the Romans both were using optical correction for a very prolonged time period. It is called as entasis. So what is entasis is, if you want to construct a building in this way. Okay, such a tall human being. So like this, when you perceive it, the thing is, when you perceive a structure like this while standing in ground, it will look like this. like this. Okay, so in order for it to be, to look like this, as in like straight lines and stuff, what they did is they built it this way. So that when you stand here and you look at it, it looks like this. So this was their entire idea behind optical correction. They wanted the buildings to look perpendicular, like in right angles and stuff. And it was not just used in the entire elevation, but it was also used in small elements like the columns. So what the Greeks did is they made the lower half of the columns wider, so that when looked at it, it looks like a straight shaft. So they widened the lower base for it to look straight. And this was Greek. And Roman, what they did is they bulged only the middle part of the column. So if you divide it this way, they use this portion alone to bulge so that it looks straight. Then we have naming of columns. So we'll look into columns later. First we'll discuss temples. So a typical Greek temple. Let's go. The front portion or the front area is called pronos, which was the entrance or the porch. The second portion of it is called cella or naos, which had the god statue and stuff. The third one is called aditon, where rituals and others were taken place. And the Greeks were also considered to be having sort of lot of cultic rituals, so they used the aditon for that. Fourth is Opisthodomus, which was used for storage of jewelry, gems and other such stuff. Okay, now basically the buildings or the temples in Greek were named based on the number of columns in the front facade and around it. So the naming is based on number of columns. Let's see how it is named. So now before that, let me talk about one simple term. In some temples or some buildings, these front two, these would be columns, but these two front would be piers or walls that are thickened in size, and they are called anta or ante. Okay, so you can see it here. We have our anta. So this type of building is called anta. Then we have it on both the side, so it is double anta. And any structure that is circular in plan and semicircular, so wait, let me say. So any structure that is circular in plan and semicircular in section is called tholos. You can remember it from our beehive tombs, which was also called as tholos. Okay, by the way, this is our lion gate. Did I talk about it? Not sure. So this is our lion, and these are our trabetions, and then followed by corbelled arches. Okay, so we have tholos and freestanding columns in front of the facade. In the facade alone, it is called as prostyle. Freestanding columns on the front facade and the back side is called amphiprostyle. Freestanding columns around the perimeter of the building is called peripteral. And here you can see there is columns around the perimeter of the building, but these columns are fused with the walls, so they are false columns or pseudo. So this becomes pseudo peripteral. Okay, now this has freestanding columns, but it has two rows. So there's one, there's two, one, two. Oh, sorry, this is wrong. So we have columns here going on as well, and we have going on here as well. This part of the columns is not considered. So even here you'll have, okay, this is correct. So there are two rows, which is row 1, row 2. Here you can see there's only one row. So this forms dipteral. Here you can see one row, two row, but the second row is infused here, which is false or pseudo. So this becomes pseudo dipteral. I hope it's easier to understand. Now I would like to give three distinct differentiation between, not three different distinct differentiation. I would like to differentiate between prostyle, peripteral and peristyle. So prostyle is column in the facade alone. Peripteral is column in the perimeter or column along the perimeter of the buildings. While peristyle generally means row of columns. Usually around a courtyard that is next to gardens or landscape areas such as that. So this alone can be called as a peristyle. So what is a peristyle hall? Is a colonnaded hall that is usually open and forms a courtyard kind of structure. Okay, so we have that. So peristyle is row of columns, peripteral is columns along the perimeter of the building, and prostyle is column in the facade alone. And it is also important to remember these two are buildings, while peristyle is just a feature. And there is also another name for peristyle. It's called tetrastone. So peristyle is also called as tetrastone. Okay, so we've discussed the temples, we have discussed intarsus, then we have Greek orders. we have Doric, which is the simplest, Ionic, which is the slender and most feminine, and Corinthian, which is the most complex, at least in the Greek order. Now, if you see the height of the column with respect to lower diameter, and this is height of entablature with respect to lower diameter. This is 7, 9, 10, 2, 2, 2, 1/4. So the height of the column with respect to lower diameter for Doric column is 7, Ionic is 9, Corinthian is 10, and the height of entablature with respect to lower diameter for all these three is 2, 2, and 2, 1/4. We'll first start with Doric. This is so bad. So, for important thing to remember about Doric column is it has no base. It straight away starts from the stereobate. Oh no, sorry, this is stylobate, and this is stereobate. These two together is called the crepidoma. Then we have our shaft, and then this is our necking, your echinus, abacus, and our architrave. This is our frieze, our cornice, and our pediment. So cornice, frieze, and architrave form our entablature. Also try to remember them in the correct order. It is also important. They've been asked a lot of times. Now we'll talk about the frieze of Doric column. So if this is our frieze, they have rectangular incisions followed by nothing but plain, and then again this is how it is repeated. These are called triglyph, and these metopes. Okay, next we have Ionic order. We have our crepidoma, our base, our shaft, our volutes. The scrolls are called volutes. We have our corners, frieze, architrave, and pediment. So this is about Ionic, and this had more feminine characteristics and most slender of all the three. Then we have Corinthian. So Corinthian again. Your base, so we have our base, crepidoma, your shaft, acanthus leaf, volutes, this is called rosette, and then architrave, frieze, corners, pediment, and these three form your entablature. Okay, then that's it. Oh yeah, in fluted columns, so imagine this is how the floater columns are, like they go when like this, right? The flutes, this sharp point is called aris, and this space that sinks in is called fillet. So that is another thing about the columns. Then so we talk about temples, orders, and I think we can go to Acropolis now. So Acropolis. Okay. Acropolis was situated atop of the mountain, as I said in the beginning. So it was situated on top of the building, and this is had the city, our agora was everything at the bottom. So this is our Acropolis. Now if you look at the rough plan, there were other structures in the plan of Acropolis. I'm just drawing, which is important. This is our propylon, which is the entrance. This is Parthenon, and this is Erechthon. Okay, so before moving on to Parthenon, we'll first discuss Erechthon. So Erechthon was built for goddess Athena and god Poseidon, and the Erection also said to be featuring something called as caryatids. So what is caryatids? Caryatids are female figurines or figures in place of columns. Let me show you a picture of it. So here you can see female figurines in place of columns. So this was predominantly found in Erection. And these are the piers or thickened walls I was talking about. And if you have this in the front alone, it was called anta, as discussed here. Yes, this is anta. Now let's move on to Parthenon. So Parthenon was for goddess Athena. And it had two ratios. One was the golden ratio, and the other was 4:9. Okay. And Parthenon. Okay, what type of temple was Parthenon? It was an octa-style peripteral Doric temple. So what does that mean? Octa-style means it has 8 columns in the facade, and peripteral means the columns were along the perimeter of the building. So it had columns running all around. And it had Doric columns. So the 8 columns were Doric. And it is also kind of important to remember that most of the temples in the Greek architecture had only 6, while Parthenon was a different case and it had 8. So that is why this octa-style peripteral Doric temple. Now about the ratios. So imagine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So imagine this is Parthenon. Then if we consider it with its pediment on and the entire span of it, then this was in golden ratio. But however, if we consider only this part, then this was in the ratio of 4:9. Also read questions when you are getting it. If it involves the pediment, if it does not involve the pediment, also see like in what way they are asking, like if it is span into height or height into span. So it can vary from 4:9 to 9:4 according to the question. So that is important to remember. We've talked about all of this. Is there anything? Yeah, we have amphitheater. I'll just tell the important things about amphitheater and we'll move on to Rome. Amphitheater. So it was called as Epidaurus. And staircase, these were your pathways. And these are your seatings. Okay, so this was scene which was used to place a backdrop and stuff. And this was your stairways. This was orchestra. We have the pathways. This was called Parados. And this was called proscenium, which is the stage. And these are your seatings. Now this orchestra was said to be 20.4 meter in diameter. That's it. And anything else? Yeah. Oh, this Epidaurus was said to be cut at the side of a hill, and it had amazing acoustics as well. And since it was at the side of a hill, the seats were made of stone. It was carved, so stone seats and stuff. So this is about Greek architecture. Now we'll move on to Rome. So initially they had Etruscan, and they mostly occupied Italy, and most of their construction was made of timber. And one of the important feature or element that most of us would remember is the Tuscan order. So the Tuscan order was first started by the Etruscan, and then the Romans kind of took it forward. And since it was started from the Etruscan, it was the first few Etruscan orders were made of timber. And Etruscan order is nothing but a much simplified form of Doric order. And they also had barrel walls. So barrel vault is the most simplest form of vault. It's nothing but a simple arch that is converted into a vault. And yeah, that is about Etruscan. We can move forward to Roman. So Romans had Forum, which was the Greek equivalent of Agora. Which is the Roman equivalent of the Agora. So this was much more like Agora in Greek. And they had Basilica. So Basilica was the courthouse for legal battles and business conversations, anything related to that. And I'll draw a rough. these are columns. So this space is your nave, and these two between the columns, it's called your aisle. And these are your entrances. So these are your entrances, and this space on the sides, the semicircular stuff, are your apses. And this is your typical basilica, Roman basilica. So the Romans, what they did is they made one particular town plan and they replicated it for all the towns that they built going forward. So almost all the towns had one basilica, at least one basilica in it. Okay. Then the Romans had waterproofing system. They had nice waterproofing, and from the barrel wall they invented the groin walls. So what are groin walls? These are nothing but intersection of two barrel walls. So this is how it was formed. So the intersection of two barrel walls forms a groin wall, and it was mostly used by the Romans. Then they had triumphal arch, which was a single standing gateway or an archway that was used for victories, to commemorate victories and honor people and other such stuff. Mostly three arches were famous in the Roman civilization or the Roman architecture period, which were Arch of Constantine, Arch of Titus, and Arch of Septimus Severus. So these were three triumphal arch examples. Let me show you. So yeah, this was an example of the triumphal arch. It's nothing but a gateway, you can see. Then about the materials. So there were three materials that was predominant. One is opus, cementitium, and and opus. Okay, first is opus caementatium, opus lactricum, and finally opus reticulatum. So opus caementatium is nothing but concrete. Opus lactricum is nothing but brickwork, and opus reticulatum is this. This is diamond shaped stone facing. This is opus reticulatum. So these were important. Then I think we can move on to amphitheater. Or Colosseum. And consider these to be staircase. Okay, these are staircases. I'm drawing very. Okay, let me. These are just staircase. So this is your arena where everything basically takes place, and just below this arena they had a 2-story place called and just below this arena they had a 2-story some place called hypogum. And this hypogum is an intricate web of cages and other machineries and other stuff that had vicious animals and gladiators, etc. So this is hypogum, just below the arena. Now the Colosseum had 3 tiers. So this is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 and tier 4. This first tier had Doric columns, and tier 2 had Ionic, tier 3 had Corinthian, and tier 4 had Corinthian pilasters. Now before talking about pilasters, the seatings were also arranged in sequence of importance. So the first tier was occupied by senators and kings. The second and the third was occupied by common men, and the fourth was for poor people and females. Okay, so pilasters. Pilasters or columns that were used only for decorative purpose. They do not have any structural input at all. So columns as decorative purpose. For decorative purpose alone. They do not have any structural input at all. Okay, that is pilasters, and Corinthian pilasters used in the tier 4 of the Colosseum. Then we have, what do we have? Yeah, Great Bath. These were also called as thermae. And I'll just mention one thing about this is hypocaust. One thing here is hypocaust. So hypocaust is a system that is used to keep the floor warm. So it is a system used to keep the floor warm, and it was used in Roman baths. So what is the system is, consider this to be your floor, and below it they had brick masonry or stone masonry done to form tunnels, so that these spaces were filled with hot water, so that so this was filled if someone is standing or someone is sitting. So this is your floor masonry, and this is flow of hot water, and this in turn keeps your floor warm. This is hypocaust, and it was used in Roman baths. And then we will move on to talking about water. They had something called as aqueducts, which was the system that was used to carry water around the city. So this was like a huge tunnel with arches and stuff, and the water was carried in it throughout the city. Then we have finally Pantheon. So Pantheon is obviously a temple, and I'll draw roughly. So this is your entrance porch, your vestibule, rotunda, and altar or apse. Now, important features of Pantheon is obviously the dome. So this was a coffered dome, so that the entire weight is reduced. So what are coffered is, I'm sure stuff is no. So if this is your dome, all these rectangular shapes were cut out from or carved out, so that the weight of the dome was reduced. So it was a coffered dome. And another important feature is the oculus. So if this is a cross section, then at the center of this space is a opening that lets in light. So, and this opening is called oculus, and it was 27 feet in dia.